Now, recording this video today was like a zero energy cell speed run, and you're about to find out why. Now, a lot of people talk to me, "Hey, Beast, cover the Noble Launcher. This thing's fantastic." And I don't really know what you guys are smoking, but the Noble Launcher is well, I prepared a list on why I haven't made a video on the Noble Launcher. Let me begin. First and foremost, this thing takes a minimum of 20 energy cells per shot. That is absurd. That is as much ammo as the Storm King's Wrath takes. And for what? It has inferior damage, and it shoots through walls, which is something, I guess, but generally when you're shooting through walls, it's through a trap tunnel, and if your trap tunnels are set up properly, that is a completely unnecessary feature. I don't have any gameplay of that because I haven't used the Noble Launcher in a squad of people, but you can trust me, it's not a necessary thing. And for the amount of ammo that costs, it's just not worth it. Now, let me just show you Exhibit A, the Storm King's Ravager, to point out as to why that is also unnecessary and that it basically does the exact same thing for free. If you have energy built up on your Storm King's Ravager, it won't go through the walls, but you can clear through crowds of enemies for free. It doesn't cost any energy cells whatsoever. Now, one of the only positive things I'm going to say about the Noble Launcher, and the only like optimistic things I will say, is if it did a little bit more damage and or cost way less. Like it cannot cost 20 energy cells for the amount of damage it does. And if it charged up quicker, maybe it would be usable. But for those reasons, I just can never ever sign off on the Noble Launcher. You are spending way too many energy cells for inferior damage and an unnecessary gimmick. And that is why I have had such a problem with this weapon for so long. In fact, the main reason it has sounded like I've had such a problem with it is because this weapon is so popular. People love the Noble Launcher, and I understand why. It looks badass. It shows itself. It even says boom on the side of the weapon here like it's some kind of hot shot. People are prepped to like praise this weapon, and yet the weapon does not deserve that kind of attention. Now, with all of that said, I will also provide some alternatives. I mentioned the Storm King's Wrath. For 20 energy cells, it is significantly more damage, albeit single target, but if you charge up to 60 energy cells, which is also what the Noble Launcher takes when it charges to max, it'll just delete crowds of enemies much more effectively than the Noble Launcher. Now, the Noble Launcher has unlimited pierce. It can go through more enemies, but it's really rare that you're going to encounter so many enemies that the Noble Launcher can't really, you're never going to encounter so many enemies that it can actually compete with the pierce cap of like a Storm King's Wrath. And by pierce cap, I mean, if you charge a Storm King's Wrath into a crowd of 100 enemies, I'm pretty sure it's not going to hit them all. But based on the way that the game renders enemies and the spawn caps, like the most enemies you're generally ever going to have in one spot is like 30, and that's plenty for a Storm King's Wrath to deal with, and it's just not necessary. And if you have significantly less enemies, it is very painful for me to spend 20 energy cells per shot dealing with individual targets. Now, I'll admit, in the footage where I'm doing that, it is unnecessary. Generally, when the bulk of the enemies are cleared away, or at least, chipped away with the affliction damage on the Noble Launcher, which is a fantastic 6 perk, by the way, that is generally when you pull out your primary weapon and deal with them that way. I admit, there's some very improper uses in my gameplay today, but that's okay, because I hate this weapon and I don't care. So, I will also add, on top of the Storm King's Wrath and the Ravager doing its job better, we have the Xenon Bow. And I know, some people have argued in the past, you can't just compare weapons and explain that as a reason that they're bad. And I say I can. I say it's very relevant. The Xenon Bow is not a paid weapon. Well, kind of. You can get it from llamas. But the Xenon Bow is in the game. You can get it from regular legendary caches for killing mini-bosses or the Storm King. You can get it from, daily llamas, which are like 50 V-Bucks, which is basically what you get from a daily mission. So that's free money right there. You can get the Xenon Bow just the same way as you can get the Noble Launcher, and it does the job way better. It goes through all the targets. It does all the damage. It goes through all the walls. It does all the things. It'll shoot your friend sky high. I don't even think I have gameplay of that. Is that bug still in the game? I hope it is. I love going to the moon with the Xenon Bow. And you know what? One energy cell per shot. It's disgusting how cheap the Xenon Bow is. I wouldn't be surprised if someday they make it more expensive. I would cry just a little bit, but honestly, I'd be all right. I'd be all right. The Xenon Bow, it's still good. It's just way too powerful of a weapon to exist, and then also pretend like the Noble Launcher is ever worth using. And yeah, it's for all of those reasons. People have asked me in so many videos why I hate on this weapon so much, and you know what? You got my answer. You got my answer. It is a weapon that does not fulfill a necessary niche, costs way too much in the process, and its job can be better done elsewhere. Now, after that scathing review, if you insist on the best perks for this weapon, I guess we can talk about it. And, well, the answer is pretty straightforward. Now, first and foremost, the 6th perk is a positive note for this weapon. Affliction is seriously good. The amount of damage is almost irrelevant because of the amount of enemies it can hit. If it can just hit all the enemies that it does, Affliction will generally finish off those targets because it's that good of a perk right now. And it's been that way for many updates. I don't think that it's going to revert to its old ways. And that's a very, very positive note. Anything that has Affliction is instantly just a little bit better. Now, the other trick is whether or not you want to run a crit build or not. It's kind of up to you. You're going to be hitting lots of targets, and Affliction will be finishing them off anyway, so you could, but double damage would be a little bit more consistent if less overall damage. You're not going to be able to spam this thing. That's very important. So running a crit build is kind of a gamble, but honestly, running this weapon at all is kind of a gamble, seeing as you're gambling that I'm not going to smack you out of my lobby. Sorry, anyway, so for the middle perk, honestly, you could do crit rating, crit damage, and then you could put a second crit rating on this for some reason. I don't know why. Reload speed is definitely nice because it takes forever to reload this thing, but honestly, it's it doesn't really matter because I don't think you should be perking it anyway. I will also add, as a fun little topic, I've brought this up in many videos before, but damage to afflicted is a tricky perk to put on this thing because for it to take effect, let me break it down. I've been through this a million times, but when you hit an enemy initially, that does 0 extra damage. When you hit them for a second time, A, they should be dead because it's a launcher and you're out 40 energy cells, and B, that affliction is only going to do 45% more damage, which means on average, you've only gotten an average of like 22.5% extra damage per shot, whereas a 30% damage perk on here would have been better from the get-go. I've said this in like bow videos in the past, where if you're going to put damage to afflicted or slowed and snared on a weapon, you need to hit for at least 3 shots or more, or else damage would have been preferred. On SMGs and assault weapons that are firing very fast, that makes a lot more sense, but on something more single target like a launcher or a bow or a sniper of sorts, or maybe even some shotguns depending on how strong they are, that damage to afflicted is not always better than a damage perk. So it kind of depends on how you look at it. I'd recommend a damage perk. All my hate for this weapon aside, I think reload is a good all-around thing to have on this. It's going to take forever. Crit rating, crit damage is kind of recommended, but double damage is not something I could blame you for. It looks like you have to do reload on the middle perk for double damage. I apologize. But either way, it doesn't really matter how you perk this thing because Affliction is going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting. So crit rating, crit damage, or double damage, definitely make sure you have reload. Fire rate could be nice, but all that fire rate really does on a weapon like this is it allows it to charge up quicker, which this weapon definitely needs that, but I'm uncertain if a fire rate perk is enough to make me use this weapon because, yeah, I have a 106 copy, and believe it or not, if you guys have been hanging around in the streams and you know kind of how long these two weapons have been in my inventory, it's because when people drop me weapons that I don't have a schematic for, I hold on to them. I keep them on hand for long periods of time so that I have it available when I'm ready to record a video, and I am finally able to get rid of these two weapons because I'm not going to need them anymore. You can't hurt anybody anymore. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been a Noble Launcher diss track. Feel free to use code Mista at your checkout, and feel free to not use the Neon Launcher. I'll see you guys later, and Twitch stream, link down below. Have a great day. And then...